to Mi-24P Startup Training. I'm Top Gun with the AKA Wardog Squadron. So I'm going to start this off with a couple of notes. First off is because of how YouTube encodes my videos as of late, um, for some reason the volume is not very loud on mobile devices, but seems to be okay on PCs. So I would advise you that if you're viewing this to go ahead and try and view it on a PC if at all possible. And anyways, you're going to want it on a big screen if you can, because there's a lot of switches in here and they're really close together. So you need to see exactly which ones I'm hitting. The other one is that, of course, this is early access, so it's only been out for a couple of days now. So it's very likely some things will change here. So if you see anything that's out of sequence compared to the current checklist or whatever that WAGS is producing, let me know. I can try and redo this or add some addendums, or I may just have to redo it at a later date if things change significantly. So let's go ahead and get started. I would say first off, you'll want to get your seat out of the way because you need to see a number of things on either side of it. So hit the backslash key on your keyboard to get rid of it. And then once everything's started up, you can put it back into place. And some of the terms for some of these controls are going to be a little alien to you if you've been sticking with Western helicopters. So the Mi-8 or the Mi-8 and the Ka-50 use similar terminology to what this uses. So if you've been sticking to like the Huey and the Gazelle, some of these names may not immediately equate in your mind, but just bear with us and we'll take you through it. So we'll start off with left and right engine stop levers, these red-handled ones, down to on. Then the rotor brake lever on the other side, down to off. And just FYI, I'm working off of my startup checklist version 1.1, which I'll go ahead and try and link into the description below. And I'll try and keep this updated. But if you have any questions in regards to it, just throw me a message on there. Any items that you do see in red text in the checklist typically means that it's an item that is already in the correct position for a cold start if you are spawning into a fresh aircraft. So if you're going into an aircraft for the first time, you shouldn't need to hit that step. It's already in the right position. If you're out there in an existing aircraft and you come back in and shut down in order to fix damage or something, then those are steps that you will want to pay attention to because they may no longer be in the original positions. So let's do the left and right engine levers, which is basically their terminology for throttles. That's one of the steps that's in red. It's already in the correct position. It should be in the middle position here for automatic. And the twist throttle, which is what you're probably used to on Western helicopters, they call it a correction lever. So we need to put our seat back into place for a moment. And we need to make sure that this is all the way in the off position. So clockwise like that is up and counterclockwise is down. So we need that full down and it should be in that position by default. So let's go ahead and get rid of the seat again. Cockpit doors, right now the command is not bindable. And I don't even see a hotspot anywhere on the door unless I just missed it. So you'll have to close that manually. That's left control C using Charlie. And when you close yours, Petrov will go ahead and close his as well, so you don't need to worry about him. Okay, canopy seal. So you'll need to rotate this full counterclockwise, and you don't hear any air or anything like that indicating that it's working. It probably won't actually do anything until the engine starts spooling up and supplying feed air to it. All right, so now we're on to the electrical. So batteries, right and left, to the right to the on position. Networked battery switch, uncover and right to on. DC voltmeter rotary, we'll go ahead and put that to battery, and there's actually two batteries here. We'll put it to the first position. And now that we have electrical power to the aircraft, if you want to, you can put some exterior lights onto the aircraft. So unfortunately, not all of them will be able to be seen, or they won't be active on just battery power. So we got formation lights and navigation lights. So the navigation lights are over here, up to on, and the formation lights over here, up is bright, down is dim, middle is the off position. And the other exterior lights won't actually work until you got your engines up and running. So inverter, or as they call it, the PO750A. So uncover and right to on. And then we got right and rear circuit breakers, and you'll see a whole mass of them behind you. And it's just like the Mi-8. You can flip all of these with a single thing. You just have to hit this lever down here. Unfortunately, that's not bindable either at the moment. And the same goes for the others as well. Actually, this one might be. But there is key binds for both of those. So for those, it is right control, right shift 1, and right control, right shift 2. And you'll hear some warnings pop up as soon as you do that. That's normal. Okay, so now at this point we can put power to our radio so we can talk to ATC if you want to request clearance. So the radio navigation panel is over here. The R863 is this switch up to on. At this point, it seems like a theme for Russian aircrafts where once you get to a certain point, you just basically turn an entire bank of switches on. That'll happen a couple of times in this aircraft. So at this point, it's feed tanks 1 and 2. And then we got the fire valves. So you can turn uncover, put those both up into the on position and recover. And then all the rest of these switches on here, you can go ahead and turn up the up to on position. So you've got your fuel delimiter, tank 4, tank 5, tank 1, tank 2. This one right here controls external tanks in case you have any on your wings. So if you don't have that, obviously you can leave that off. And next we've got our fire extinguishers. So the far right switch here is we've got fire extinguisher power. And then we got fire extinguisher control switch. We want both of those to the up to on position. So at this point we're ready for APU start. And we want they call it the launch method switch. It's already in the down start position, so we don't need to touch that. So we just need to do APU start. So give it a hold for about 2 seconds or so, and you'll see the auto on will kick on. Now you can see it spooling up. And now we can proceed with the engine start. The left engine's already selected by default, so we can just go ahead and press and hold the start button. And verify we get some good temperatures and the rotors are going. And this will stabilize at probably around 75% or so for RPM. Alright, once everything's stabilized, you can go ahead and switch over to the other engine. So we go ahead and switch this to the down position for the right engine. Make sure it's still in the start position for the mode, and go ahead and hit the start button. Again, just hold it for about 2 seconds or so. we got a good light. Alright, so we got both engines up and going. Let's get our seat back so we can see our collective. Now we can go ahead and do our twist throttle to full clockwise to get it up to full power. And it is advisable that you have your parking brake on while you're doing a startup. It's pretty easy to start drifting if you don't. If you're in a fresh aircraft, it'll be on by default, and you'll probably also have your control indicators up here as well. So you'll see this B up here blinking. That means your parking brake is on. If you came back to repair, then make sure that you turn your parking brake on before you get these engines started back up. Alright, so let's get the seat back out of the way again. Alright, so left and right generators, so right on for both of those. And both of the AC transformer switches. So we've got our 115 volt and our 36 volt. So right to the on position for main. And at this point we can go ahead and turn our inverter off. So back to the left position and recover. And turn our rectifiers on, so right to on for both. And network to batteries, left to off and recover. And at this point we don't need the APU anymore, so we can do a stop on the APU. So just depress that. And now it's just the avionics switches at this point. So SPUU52, which I believe is the autopilot system, which is basically this whole panel right here. So the power switch is here, up to on. And now we're doing another one of those mass turn-ons. So basically everything on this row for the most part. So we got intercoms 1 and 2, up to on. And we got our Jade row. And our Euclid. I'm assuming that's either a radio or radio encryption. I'll have to research that. Our RV5, Doppler, airspeed 2 Doppler, gyros 1 and 2, our Greven, and so the radar warning, if you've got a lot of AWACS in the area and whatnot, and you know you don't need it right now, you could probably just leave this off, because otherwise you'll probably get a lot of beeping in your ears. But for right now, we can leave those off, but just keep in mind that's where those are. I've got a lot of E2s and whatnot in this area, so I don't want them beeping at us constantly. Alright, so let's turn on our blinker up to on position. And now we've got our gyro test. And something for this startup, I'm not doing all the built-in safety tests and stuff like that. I mean, this is a sim, so I don't have random failures turned on, so I know everything works. So I'm just getting this aircraft up as quickly as possible. If you've got random failures turned on when WAGS does a more in-depth detailed startup, and if he starts doing a whole bunch of built-in tests and stuff like that, then feel free to follow those, but I'm just leaving stuff like that out. So press and hold each of these 2 buttons on either side of this switch for a couple seconds, and then release, and that should settle the gyros down. Alright, autopilot's K and T channels, that's these 2 right here. So that's the K channel, that's the T channel. If you want, you can turn your mirrors on. So which is just the M as in Michael key. And if nothing else, those are really nice to have to verify that your countermeasures are working. Without those, you'll have to crank over your shoulder to see them. At this point, if you want to do interior lighting, if it's getting dark, you can do, you've got 3 rotaries down here. These will control the red lighting for the gauges and panels. and then you've also got two more over here. In the daylight, they're barely even noticeable, but in the nighttime, you can definitely see them working. And while you're down here, you can also do the armament panel red light switches if you want. So up to on. At this point, now that the engines are running, you can do the rest of the exterior lighting. So you got your strobe light up to on, and you got your blade tip lights up to on. Alright, and that's pretty much it for getting the aircraft started up. Now, but there is another note. Once you do take off, you can go ahead and remember this is a retractable gear helo, so go ahead and retract your gear. If you try to click this in the cockpit, you will have to unlock it first, like most other Russian aircraft, before it'll let you raise the gear. If you do it by keybind, it seems to do the lock automatically for you, so I would recommend keybinding that if you can. Save you a little bit of clicking. The other things to do is let's go ahead and get all the weapon related stuff up and running. This is something I suspect is going to change. They've got all of the sight lamps set to backup. I don't know why. So I set them to the main lamps for both of these, just up to mains. And then I like to use the predicting sight, so I do the sight mode to sync, and I also do the sight mode here to auto. And down on the main weapons panel, go ahead and turn your sight up to on and range up to auto. And once you're ready to start employing weapons, you've got basically consider this your master arm, your fire control up to on, and at this point your weapons are ready to go. Now, one important thing to note, which I don't think I've seen anybody else touch on as of yet, is if you have a hot start aircraft or you have an aircraft with a human gunner in the front seat, you're good to go as far as countermeasures goes. However, if you have a cold start aircraft, even if you tell your gunner to go ahead and ready the weapons, which by the way is left control W, and he'll start turning on all the weapon systems in his end of the cockpit. It'll take upwards of like 2 or 3 minutes. But even though you tell him to do that, countermeasures are not turned on. And I'm in a single player mission here, so I'll try and jump into the front and show you. So this panel over here, so it's set to 2 interval by default, which is what I tend to like, and series 4. But the power to both of the launchers on either side of the, all 3 sets of launchers on either side of the aircraft are turned off by default, and the sequence is set off by default. So if you try and use your countermeasures without hitting this stuff, you've got nothing. So you want to turn one or both of these on. If you want to try and extend your countermeasures for as long as possible, then just click one of them on, and then once the first one's once that one's expended, you can turn the other one on. Or if you want as many flares out as possible per sequence, then turn them both on. And then you've got your set 1, 2, 3, and it has an off position, which is what it's in by default. So how that works, there's some other videos already out there regarding countermeasures, but just a quick rundown. If you want chaff and flares, chaff has to go in the first sets of launchers, and it has to be done in groups of 64 because each side is 32, and you have to load each side the same way. So if you want the first of the 3 banks set with just chaff, then you want chaff set to 64, and it'll fill banks 2 and 3 on either side with flares. If you want the first 2 banks on either side set up with chaff, you'll set chaff to 128, and then the flares will just be 64. So what I tend to do is I set chaff to 64, so it's just in banks 1. So unless I know I'm going into a radar, an active radar missile environment, radar SAMs. If it's primarily going to be SHORADs and man pads I'm facing, then I'll set it to set 2 or 3. and go from there. You can keybind those and you can control those from the back cockpit. You know, your key bindings will work in the front cockpit for those. So I strongly advise setting those. They're not named terribly well. I'm sure those will probably change in the near future. Uh, I'll try and put in some notes in the future regarding those. But at this point, you are pretty much good to go. And go ahead and release your parking brake, taxi out to the runway if you want to do a running start, or you're good to take off. I hope this has been helpful. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, feel free to send me a message. Thank you.